Hi, everyone, and welcome to Horse Illustrated's webinar series. My name is Mary Cage. I'm the digital manager here at Horse Illustrated, so I'll be your host today. And of course, our guest is none other than Pat Parelli. So Pat, thank you so much for joining us. We're thrilled to have you.
Thanks.
Yeah. So kind of the way it's going to work is I'll run through some questions from the Horse Illustrated side of things that we've kind of prepared for you and kind of covered things from your career, your philosophy, your teaching of other horsemen and things of that nature. And then we'll open up the floor to our audience Q&A. So for those of you attending, there should be a little Q&A icon on your screen. And that's where you'll type in your questions that you have for Pat. Again, that'll be kind of like the latter part of the webinar after I've run through my questions, but you can submit them at any time, and then towards the end, I'll run through those. We'll get to as many of them as we can. We also had a couple that were submitted on social media, so we'll ask those as well. But yeah, obviously, Pat really doesn't need an introduction if you're here, but his name is synonymous with natural horsemanship, and over his career, he's impacted the lives of thousands of horses and humans, of course, through his innovative methods with equines, but also as an educator, he's impacted more than 200,000 students. I think you have more than 150 Parelli professionals now, and it's just been very impactful on humans and horses alike. So, Pat, one of my first questions I always like to ask our guests is how you very first fell in love with horses, and kind of in that vein, if you remember your very first horse or pony.
Well, actually, it's pretty simple. I was raised in the East Bay area of San Francisco, and believe it or not, we could even ride our horses to school in those days.
All right.
And horses were everywhere. People had them in their backyards. People had them, most of the boarding places where people had, like where I boarded my horse, was just a pasture. And, there were 30 horses out in the pasture, and you had to go out and try to catch your horse. And of course, all the other horses that didn't want to be caught taught your horse not to want to be caught and all that sort of thing. But so there were horses everywhere, and plus on television there westerns were it was just horses everywhere. And I remember we lived in Newark, California, which is on the East Bay side of the Bay Area, and the parade, which went through the main part of town, 2 streets in is where they everybody prepared. And I remember there were horses parked out, in front of our house. They were grooming them. They were painting gold, sprinkly stuff on their feet and stuff like that. And so I was sitting there watching all the horses and everything like that when we watched the parade. But the next day, I walked out there, and there was these gold hoof prints where they had sprayed the thing, right in front of my house. And I was like, I would go out there every day and just go, I can't believe it. There was a horse right in front of my house.
Yeah.
So I've just always been horse crazy. And I think there's only 2 kinds of people in the whole world: horse lovers and the other kind. And I just one of those people that loves horses. That's all there is to it.
Yeah, it's one of those things that gets in your blood, especially when you're young like that. It's a fascination. And once you're around the animal, how can you not love them?
And like my sister, I gave her a horse for her 12th birthday, and she gave it back to me 2 weeks later.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things. Either you love horses or you don't.
Absolutely. So as that love of horses developed over time, when did you know that you wanted to pursue horses as your career, as your livelihood?
Well, I think that really happened in college.
Okay.
Well, first of all, in 4-H, when I was 12 years old, my 4-H teacher said, "You are really natural with horses. You should think about, you're such a good rider." And I was doing flying lead changes. I didn't even know what a flying lead change was. I was just changing directions. And she said, "You're just so natural with horses. You should think about that as a career." So, one of those little thoughts. But when I was in college, I went to Fresno State University out in California, and I was in Clovis, California, which is a little town, and it was the rein cow horse capital of the world. And there were several at least 6 or 7 world champions in that town, in that area. And it was just the fever that everybody had. That, you wanted to. I was starting colts for a living because I was rodeoing and stuff like that. But then I realized that what I really wanted to do was get really good with horses. I wanted to be so good with horses that even horses thought I was brilliant, not just the judges.
Right, right. Hey, and sometimes that's the tricky thing to do, is convincing the horse versus the humans. But I'd say you've done a pretty good job of it, and you've helped others along the way. And you often talk about horsemanship being, the journey of the horse and human learning to understand each other. Can you kind of dive into your philosophy on what horsemanship truly means to you?
Yeah, well, I try to make. I always say there's 2 kinds of people in the world: simplifiers and complicators. And complicators think simplifiers are complicated, but
Yep.
I'm a simplifier. And so my real job is to help regular people get extraordinary results. And in doing so, I try to come up with sayings or phrases or different definitions and stuff like that. So I decided I was going to define what horsemanship is, real horsemanship. But, natural horsemanship and real horsemanship are the same thing. It's natural for the horse. So here's my definition: the perpetual and progressive series of habits and skills that both horses and humans need, both on the ground and in the saddle, to become partners in preparation for purpose and performance. So really, horsemanship is the foundation. It's the cake.
Yeah.
All the different disciplines and stuff like that, whether it's English or Western or speed events, it doesn't matter. That's the icing. And I think people get confused with that. They think that English is different than Western. The foundation for all, like when we all went to elementary school and high school, nobody said, "Oh, well, those people are going to be, executives, and we're going to teach them different, or they're going to be." No, we all learn, reading, writing, arithmetic, and all the different basics and stuff like that, social skills. So that's our foundation. And I like to think about our program for horses as being the Montessori of horsemanship. In other words, we are going to make sure every single horse, like in my horse training operation here in my school, where I teach people how to train horses, we make sure every horse gets the best foundation it can be, so it can be the best horse it can be. Then it can specialize. So foundation before specialization. And I think, again, I try to come up with things to really simplify things for people so that they look, if I can save somebody 2 decades, I've done a good job.
Yeah.
Someone in your generation, if by the time you get to be 40 years old, you are where I'm at, then I've done a good job, because I've made things simple for you and given you a blueprint, left behind a blueprint. And so many great horsemen that I have studied with, they were great horsemen, but they didn't have videos, they didn't have books, they didn't have pictures, they didn't have anything that they left behind other than the fact that I have memories being with them. And I remember being with Mr. Troy Henry, one of my first real mentors. And I'm like, you got to write a book. They didn't even have videos back in those days.
Right.
You just had to write a book. But no, he passed away and it was gone. So I'm trying to leave a legacy.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And, as technology advances and we have these different methods of learning, having those videos to look back on is such a helpful tool. I mean, obviously, I work for a print media company. I think books and print media have such an impactful, they're such an impactful resource, but there's just something about, something so hands-on as working with the horse, having that video, if you're not able, of course, to be there in person, is very helpful. And kind of on that note, obviously you've taught so many people throughout your career and continue to. If you had to choose one key takeaway for someone to come away from when learning with horses, what would that be? I know it's a different circumstance, as you said, with every individual horse, and for that matter, every person, but what would be the most important takeaway?
That study with the best, forget the rest. And so many people end up with a banana flavored pepperoni enchilada with pickle juice and a cherry on top, because they get on the internet and they learn something here, they study, and they try to put it all together. So what I've done is I've put a blueprint together. I put a program together, pedagogical. From doesn't matter if you've never seen a horse or you are an Olympian. David O'Connor, after he won his gold medal, went through at the Olympics, won my. Started studying my program. We started, and we went through it step by step, level by level. And my dad was a world champion boxer, and if he would have started into martial arts, he would have had to start at the beginning. And so many people have this multitude of, melting pot of ideas and philosophies, and their grandpa told them something, and some old guy or somebody over there told them something. They read something here. Mm-hmm. So there are 4 things that cause people not to really be great with horses: mythology, wives' tale, bovine fecal matter, and then ego. And that's what makes people believe their own BS. And the horse is the truth. The horse knows what you know, and the horse knows what you don't know. And most people don't know what they don't know. And if the horse knows what you don't know and you don't know it, you got a problem. You just don't know it yet. So what, to me, a program, stick with the program, get a program, stick with the program till you get the basics, then go out and get the spokes. And that's why even in our program, we have created the hub and the spokes. We've created the hub of the 4 levels for recreational riders, level 1, 2, 3, 4, on the ground and in the saddle. Then I've got over 2,200 videos on spokes on what do you do with a little foal? What do you do with an Arabian? What do you do with a barrel horse? What do you do with a horse that's spoiled? What do you do with a horse that's got problems? What do you do with a horse, all the different, that doesn't like this kind of trailer? All the different thousands and thousands of things. Those are the spokes. But the spokes, if they're not attached to a hub, it ain't going to work. You ain't going to put Chevy parts on a Volvo. It ain't going to work. And that's where so many people, especially in today's thing, you're watching people here watching this. Who knows how many thousands of people are watching this right now? And they're probably going to try to take 1 or 2 things away from this and 1 or 2 things. It's all got to, it's got to fit together. Yeah. That's the thing that I've done the best job of, is I've studied with the very best horsemen in the world. And I found what was similar between Tom Dorrance and Ray Hunt and Ronnie Willis and Troy Henry and Freddie Kniean, the greatest circus trainer of all time, and Walter Zettel, the greatest dressage master of all. All those saying what was similar, not what was different or just a piece here and a piece. What I found was, number 1, their philosophy, what was in their heart. What did they do things with horses and for horses, or did they do things to the horse? And so many people, they look at things like, what do I do to a horse that kicks? I go, no, what do you do with and for a horse who doesn't want to kick you? Right. What do you do to him when he kicks? Punishment doesn't work for prey animals. So I could get on my bandwagon here, but I think that's the biggest thing is pick a program and study with it, and pick one that feels great in your heart. And because we all know in our hearts when something's right. We all know in our hearts when it's true. So that's why. I've had over 200,000 graduates in 73 different countries, including Texas.
There you go. Yeah. Well, as you said, that's really what horsemanship is about. It's the foundation. And like you touched on, we do kind of live in that instant gratification type of society, and horses don't work that way. So you've got to have that foundation and go from there. So you kind of touched on your levels program, and I know that we do have an audience member question about it, but could you just kind of describe that program and how you feel that it sets someone up for success with their horse or as a horseman?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, in about 1973 or 4, something like that, I got a new puppy. And I've had lots of puppies, and I still have new puppies all the time. But I decided this time I was going to do it right. So I went and took puppy training lessons. And the first thing we did is taught them on a leash, how to do things, to sit, stay, lay down. And, then we used longer leashes. And I thought, why don't horse people have kind of a dog obedience kind of a thing? Yeah. Well, lucky for me, I ran into some great horsemen like Troy Henry and Tom Dorrance and Ronnie Willis that were really, really great with horses on the ground and taught horses to do most people only lead the horse from one side. Yeah. And they were teaching me to lead horse, to send horses in front of me, behind me, all different kind of things on the ground, on the right side, the left side. And all of a sudden I started realizing this is the biggest missing piece, because people have tall bodies, horses have long bodies. And so we have to have a new logic. And so the next thing people do is they hold the horse up short and they do everything you can imagine wrong. You know, my most popular audio tape was called Humans Are From Mars, Horses Are From Venus.
Okay.
And then some guy copied me and then wrote it about men and women. Yeah, I'm just teasing. But the point of it is that this is the levels program starts everybody off with what we call learning the 7 games on the ground. I call it online, on a line. That was before computers ever had the word online. So my online is the original online. And we start off with a 12-foot, not a 7-foot lead rope, but a 12-foot. Then we go to 22 feet and do a 45 to teach people how to read and rate horses and how to influence their energy on the ground first. Once you do that and you start to know how horses feel, think, act, and play, then your instincts will kick in. It's kind of like Karate Kid. We got to learn wax on, wax off. There's some things that we can learn on the ground that are going to highly influence us in the saddle. And just because someone's a good rider, I was a good rider, but I didn't know how to get horses to ride and slide and spin and win and turn and burn. I didn't know how to do that. I could stay on. I had a rodeo career, 14 years, riding bucking horses till my brains came in. I had a 98% ride record. That didn't mean I can get horses to do anything from the saddle. Yeah. But once I learned on the ground, all of a sudden it started making sense. And so I thought, if it took me that long for it to make sense, I gotta give everybody else the clues. I gotta give people the roadmap, the trail to follow. And so that's really the biggest thing. Is level 1 is about learning on the ground. Level 2 is on the ground and in the saddle, what we call freestyle, learning your macro things, how to get horses, how to push a turn instead of lean and pull a turn, how to do some of the very, very simple basics that, again, I've helped people from every kind of walk in life: English, Western, barrel racers, ropers, cutters, jumpers, dressage, and most people lean to turn. And the secret is you got to lift and push a turn. So we start teaching that on level 2. Level 3 is about excellence and tasting excellence and knowing, kind of like equitation and learning some things that more refined. Level 4 is about completing the foundation, learning how to ride a horse with finesse, how to ride a horse with precision. So basically, the whole program is online and liberty on the ground. Teach, when you take off the halter and lead rope, there's only one thing left: the truth. Yeah. A horse doesn't follow you, that takes off. Guess what? That's the truth. You got a lead rope, but he has to stay there. And he might be able to jerk away from you, and you're going to get a learn burn, and then you're going to learn that truth. But if you take off that halter and lead rope, guess what? And liberty means way more than just the round crawl. Remember, next weekend will be the 43rd year since my first seminar. I'm going to be doing a seminar in Ocala, Florida, and it's called the Horse Psychology Summit. And we're going to be doing a whole bunch of sessions on beyond the round corral. A lot of people think you put a horse in a round corral, run them around, and they join up and they, bond with you, and it's all done. Well, the round corral is just a starting place. So we're going to do a whole series of things on how do you get a horse to want to be with you, to influence him, so he's like sticks to you like he did his mother as soon as you're out of that round corral, when you're in an arena, when you're out in an open field. How do you get a horse to want to be with you that good? A lot of people can't even get the dog to do that.
That's true.
And so anyway, so again, because as humans, we want to micromanage everything. So I think the way our program works is just, it really teaches people how horses feel, think, act, and play, and how to become a horseman. Not just a good rider, not just a winner, not just a trail rider, whatever. It's like, how do you become a complete horseman? How can you get it to where your horse knows that you know what you need it to know on the ground and in the saddle? Sure.
Absolutely. And you starting out with that, you kind of touched on your 7-game system. And funny enough, that's over the years. We have an article about that on our website, and it's consistently been very popular and a resource that people come back to. So can you kind of dive into those a bit?
Sure. Well, when I first started doing clinics in 1983, I realized, the very first clinic I did, I'm driving into the facility and an ambulance was driving out. Somebody had gotten there, people had gotten there early and decided to warm their horse up before we did the clinic, right? Well, they got bucked off or something stupid happened. And then so I thought, well, let's start on the, it took me a couple of sessions of seeing this little scenario. And I started, let's just start on the ground first. Well, I realized that people either were sneaking around their horses or they were unaware of what was going on. So I started realizing that what do other horses do? Like the alpha horse, what does the alpha horse do with all the other horses? Well, he dominates, or she dominates the other horse. But first thing is they all like her the best. So you got to do is you got to be friends with that horse. How do you make friends with a horse? How do you get a horse to see that when you move your arms around and stuff like that he should read your body language and go, oh, he doesn't mean something negative, something to be afraid of. So we call it the friendly game. The first thing is, how do you make friends with a horse, and how do you get a horse to be confident around all the things that we do? Because oftentimes we get in a hurry or something, and the horse has got to go, oh, you're not here to hurt me. Number two, you got to teach a horse to follow steady pressure. And so I remember sitting on an old joke about sitting on a tack. You sit down on a tack. Oh, you're not going to sit there very long. So I thought you wouldn't sit on a porcupine either. So it's like if you could push your horse like you had, a porcupine in your hand, and it touched him, he'd move away. So I call it the porcupine game, steady pressure. So many people when they lead a horse with a halter, the horse drags like a husband going Christmas shopping. He leans against pressure. He's not coming off that pressure. And same thing when we ride them, we've got to teach them steady pressure. The same thing, we've got to be able to teach a horse with rhythmic pressure. Like if we're going to move a group of cattle, we're going to start, yeah, let's go. Come on, a little bit of rhythmic pressure. So there's a time to use steady pressure and rhythmic pressure. So if you have, like, say, your lunge whip or something in this hand, you're going to put rhythm in this hand, you're going to put steady pressure in this one. You got to teach a horse zone by zone. You got to move his hindquarters. So the first three games are really the most instrumental. Then after that, we got to teach a horse to go north and south on a straight line. Walk, trot, canter, trot, walk, stop, back up on a straight line. You'd be surprised how many people, how many horses don't have the habit of just going from a canter down to a halt on a straight line. Yeah. You go dun 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 dun. Okay. Then we got to teach circles. We got to make a game out of it. We got to and that's the whole point of it, is using psychology is making a game. So we've all heard of the Pavlovian conditioned response. You ring the bell and feed the dog a steak. That's using psychology. Pretty soon you ring a bell, the dog starts going, So psychology and making a game out of things is the same thing. So we got to make a game out of a circle. And the way you do that is you say to it, let's say you're riding a circle, you ride the circle, you look at the circle, and if the horse goes off the circle, you pick the reins up and say, no, I'll leave you alone when you're on the circle. Pretty soon the horse says, oh, I'm in harmony. If I'm out of harmony with them, something happens. I run into a boundary. So little things like that. And then we got the sideways game. We got to teach horses to go sideways. The better a horse goes backwards and sideways, the better he does everything else. The worse he goes backwards and sideways, the worse he does everything else. You'd be surprised how many horses I've got in training, retraining, like jumping horses and stuff like that, has zero backup because their sport doesn't insist on it. We just start with teaching them to back up and go sideways, and all of a sudden they're a different horse.
Sure.
Okay. And then of course the last one is the squeeze game. Horses are born skeptics, cowards, claustrophobics, and panic-aholics by nature in various degrees. In other words, they are afraid to go into a metal cave on wheels, a horse trailer. They're afraid to go into the horse rack. They're afraid to go into narrow spots. They should be. That's what the lion wants them to do, right?
Yep.
So what we have to do to prove our partnership potential is we have to teach horses to be confident, and to be confident, curious, sensitive, and responsive. So instead of just lunging a horse to get them tired, let's work on 7 different elements that are going to balance that horse. So if we can do 7 things, then just like the week, we got 7 days in the week. We've got this whole thing where we get a rhythm, we get a harmony, we get a flow, and constantly on the ground and in the saddle, we're either going to get any more confident or get any more curious or get any more sensitive, get any more responsive. And as soon as we can get all those things, we know that how important straight lines are, how important circles are, how important lateral moves are, and how important constriction is, whether it's going in and through something like over a jump, through a mud puddle, into a trailer, or just asking the horse to collect and collect his body and transfer his weight to the hindquarters. Whatever it is, we've got to make a game out of it. We've got to balance all 7 of those. Look, I'm from an old cowboy school where we just kick them to go and pull them to stop, reins to turn. Well, what I have found out with great horsemen, some of the greatest the planet has ever seen, is those are the things you don't do. You don't kick to go, you don't pull to stop, and you don't use your reins to turn unless you're out of control. And you should be in control, in communication, in control 99% of the time. But yet most people just, that's all they've ever been taught.
Right. And again, it all comes down to what we started this conversation on, is understanding that horse and having that foundation of how things work in that horse's brain, not in our brains. So
yeah, and the way that, they're prey animals, so they want safety, comfort, and play. But humans and dogs, we're predators, so we want praise and recognition and material things. Belt buckles are important to us. New saddles important to us. All when somebody gets a horse and gets a brand new blanket on them, that first thing the horse goes out there and rolls in the mud puddle or tears it, we're all upset. The horse is like, I don't care. They don't care.
The horse is happy about the mud.
Values. They don't care about our values.
Yeah, absolutely. So that kind of dives into, your philosophy and your training program and all of that. I want to shift gears a little bit just to talk about kind of the experiences you've had throughout this career and the places horses have taken you. I mean, you've done some pretty amazing things with horses. I mean, you've even performed for the Queen of England, for one thing. And are there any standout experiences that you've had with horses, or where horses have taken you?
One of the most indelible ones was National Geographic called me up one day and said, we want to know if you be willing to take the Mustang Challenge. And I said, what's the Mustang Challenge? And they said, there's a herd of Mustangs in New Mexico that we have tried now for 3 years to capture and get their blood drawn for DNA, so we can see if they are from the lost conquistadors, the first original horses that got lost, that got away from the Spanish and, blah, blah, blah. So I said, well, yes, what is it? And they said, well, we want you to, capture this herd of horses, and we want you to tame them enough so that a veterinarian can come out and draw blood. And while you're doing it, we want you to be able to get them to where you can ride them too. I said, great. How many horses? They said the whole herd. And I said, how long? They said 3 days. So in that 3 days, we went out, and first I said, well, first of all, the horses know where they're at. I have no idea. I've never been to this particular part of the desert. So I said, give me a helicopter and fly me around and show me the terrain and show me the horses. And we did all that stuff, right? So we did. Well, the next day when we went back, the horses weren't even close. They were 10 miles from where we saw them first, okay? So they went up in a helicopter, again, and they were now up on top of a mesa. Mm-hmm. So now we had to figure out how we're going to get there. So we had to go 30 miles around, back up this thing, and get up on top of this mesa. It was about 1,000-foot sheer drop, like the Man from Snowy River on this side. And that side was easy, but it was to be 30 miles around there to get them over up this canyon where we wanted to be able to work with them. We got up there, and the Mustangs took off. They took off running, and they got to the edge of the mesa where it's like, okay, we got them kind of hemmed up now. Just when we were sitting there, got everybody kind of the horses relaxed. We had them trapped, cliff on each side. The helicopter comes in to get a better shot and spooks the horses over the cliff. They jumped, the whole herd.
Oh my goodness.
So my team and I just said, I didn't say anything. I just went. I just jumped off the cliff. Sure. And so did my guys. We all went off. Down we went. Mm-hmm. We went down. And one of the riders, the saddle had gone over the head. Mm. And so some of the team stayed back to help her. I kept going, kept following. The horses, of course, are getting way out in front, All I could see was the dust. Well, by the time all this happened, I saw this person out in the middle of the desert. Well, it was a cameraman. And I said, what are you doing here? And he said, well, the helicopter was running out of fuel. So it dropped me off to get a picture of you guys coming and blah, blah, blah. Okay, good. Adios. I get out there, and finally I come over this ridge, and I saw where the dust was settling. And this is the part, I was the only one there. This is one of the most fabulous things I've ever happened. I came over the ridge, and I kind of slowing down, and I could sense that the horse was there. They had stopped, and they had stopped in a kind of a creek, in a sandy area.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of made my presence known, and then I backed off. I went a little closer, and then I backed off. We've all heard about approach and retreat. And pretty quick, the stallion just kind of like put his head down, and then he laid down. Wow. Then the lead mare laid down, all the babies, the whole herd all laid down, right? Everything's cool. So then I just started riding away, and they started following me.
Wow.
And there I was. Everything was great. And they followed me for about a mile.
Okay.
Because they could have gone that way, but where I wanted them to go was that way. Got them about a mile, and the helicopter shows back up.
Of course.
But anyway, about that time, the team showed up, and we got around them. And I'm talking about, we had about a 3-mile stretch. The farthest rider was 3 miles that way. I was over here and a couple guys in the middle, and we got them to go up this canyon. But that 30 minutes of being with those horses who had only been chased by motorcycles, they'd been trying for 3 years to get this, and people got hurt. Horses had, all kinds of things out there in the middle of this desert. It had not gone good. That that reading and rating what they were doing, how they were feeling about things, their thinking, and their curiosity. Once they got confident, they got curious. And then when I just led the way, that they just thought, why not? Sure. So just knowing the way horses feel, think, act, and plan, I promise you, the real secret with horses is just watch what everybody else does and do the opposite. And that's it, and so some of those things like what Tom Dorrance has shared with me, and his older brother Bill, and Ronnie Willis and Ray Hunt, some of those things that they had been around wild horses. They had been around, and things that they shared with me, that when I got to test those truths, they're what they are. They're guiding principles. And knowing how to rate that energy of that bubble around that herd, and knowing how to just play with that a little bit and get them curious, and then things like that. It just, hey, there ain't no gold medal in the world. There's no belt buckle. There's no prize money in the world that is even worth a hundredth of that experience, that 30 minutes there. So.
Exactly. Like you said, it paid off. And I mean, what a magical moment just to experience that and know that you were able to make them comfortable enough to join you like that.
It was the truth. The best part about it is all the things that I had learned and received from these, I'm a shareaholic, I'm a learnaholic. And so those people had shared with me, when I got to try it, it was the truth, and it worked. And it was like, I'm on the right track. So then that just gives me more enthusiasm to share it with more people.
Absolutely. I mean, who wouldn't want to experience a moment like that, or even something a fraction of that magnitude? So obviously that's a standout moment that you've experienced. And I know it can be tricky to narrow these things down when you've gotten to do so many incredible things and be around so many incredible horses. Could you pinpoint any horses that have really stood out in particular to you over the years?
Well, of course, this mare that I got in Tasmania, her name is Magic.
Mm-hmm.
And she was the problem horse at the clinic. And she came, and they called her, she was pitch black, and they called her Spider because she was a black widow. She had put several people in the hospital. She'd gone through 6 professional trainers, and they had tortured her to try to get her to do things. And after 2 days, I was riding her bareback and bridleless, and I fell in love with her. And she's the horse that I got to take to the Queen of England. She's the horse that when I bought her and flew her back to America, and and even back to Australia one time, and then back to America, and then over to Europe. And that horse she was racehorse fast. She could jump 4.5 feet with me in a Western saddle. She could do flying lead changes every stride. She could canter backwards. She could do jump a jump, stop 3 strides later, and do piaffe on the spot and backwards and pirouette. I've never, ever had a horse like that. She lived for
Wow.
30 years.
Wow.
Lucky for me, a company called Biogen volunteered to clone her for me.
Really?
And now I have a 4-year-old Magic Smear that looks like, acts like, feels like, smells like the real Magic. So I've just got maybe 50 or 60 rides on her, and I'm pretty excited because now I've got the love of my life again somehow, that that there. So that right there is she was my dream horse. She was everybody else's nightmare.
Sure.
And it was all I had to do is do what she needed me to do.
Mm-hmm.
Not make her do things and do things, but do things with her and for her. And she was a right brain introvert. So I had to go slow, and I had to build her confidence and get her to where it was her idea. And then pretty soon what she volunteered for me was unbelievable. So people can see videos all over the and then of course the black stallion Casper that I had, that, he would be at Liberty next to her, and we did all kinds of unbelievable things. But Magic was the most magic horse I've ever had. So she was fantastic. And
yeah,
that taking and seeing, how far you can go with a horse, and, to kind of be the Ginger Rogers and Fred Astaire pairing. That's a great thing.
Yeah, that's very special. And it kind of brought me back to when you were talking about earlier. You have simplifiers and you have complicators, and everybody was just complicating things with her, and you made it simple, and look what it turned into. So
yeah, when I started explaining to people about the 7 modalities, the 7 games that you play with a horse on the ground and the saddle, I've read so many books on, let's say, dressage and stuff, and someone explains how the latitudinal flexions and the transferring of the weight from the forequarters to the hindquarters, and then the hind leg transfers up to the diagonal superior, and it's almost like they're trying to prove to somebody that how much they know and how scientifically they can complicatedly explain something to somebody, and it makes my eyes cross I'm like, then when I started learning how to do flying lead changes, I'm like, yeah, there's a diagonal pair, but you got to lift up and push it over a little bit, and not lean in the direction lean. And it's like as soon as I started doing that, I started seeing other people get extraordinary. I got a handicapped son that had hydrocephalus when he was born. He went into a coma. They said if he lived through the night after they put a shunt in, he'll never walk or talk. He rides and slides, spins and wins, turns and burns, and has been on the cover of America's Horse. He knows how to do flying, lead changes, spin. If I can get him to do it, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And then on top, they had a stroke when he was 12. If I can get him to do this kind of stuff, then I can certainly simplify things to help regular people get extraordinary results. And that's the most exciting thing for me, that this program, even if they never ever meet me or ride underneath me, because we have an apprentice program here. We're in South Carolina now, and we call it Parelli Landing. It's the Harvard of Horsemanship. I've got an apprentice program here for people who've got talent, who want to see if they can become professional horsemen. I'm trying to help to create the next superstars for the world, because I've got to leave something behind. Yeah. So I've got to leave a program behind. I've got to leave this school behind. And so if trying to get it to where I can save people that really have the ambition, if they're really willing to be led by principles, patience, and sequence, follow a blueprint that's definite but flexible, that they can become the best me they can be. They can become that special partner that horses are looking for. Every great horses do it instantly. Yep. And so that's what, to me, having that path to follow, and to know, what's a lot, not only knowing what to do, sometimes knowing what not to do is almost more important than knowing what to do. Mm-hmm. And so, like I tell people, don't ever chase a horse. Lunging is chasing a horse. You can play a game where you can cause him to leave and go in a circle and come back to you. But that's not chasing. Don't chase. Some people that go to put a halter on, the horse puts his nose, and they're trying to chase the horse's nose with the halter. They don't realize. Most people don't realize, because we're predators, it is in our DNA to chase. Just like most dogs, it's in their DNA to chase. And so I promise you and everyone that's listening here, don't chase a horse. But it takes take a decade or two to find out what "don't chase a horse" really means.
Sure.
And so we have to learn to attract horses. We have to learn to draw horses. We have to learn to help them see we have to know enough what we're doing so that we have leadership, not showing them who's boss, showing them that we are the leader they're looking for.
Yeah. I mean, as you mentioned, I'm sure it takes some deprogramming for us, because we are prey, or they are prey, and we are predators naturally. And so it takes some alterations of our own brains to kind of get there.
Well, it's isn't it peculiar these poor prey animals perceive us people as predators and not partners?
Right.
Well, prior to the Parelli program. And so the program is really about teaching people to become partners with horses. And part of it's on the ground, and part of it's in the saddle. Mm-hmm. And once people realize that if they get good with horses on the ground, how it changes the way their brain thinks and sees things. And next thing you know, and that's how it worked for me, because until I was with Mr. Henry, who was a master with horses on the ground, especially in a round corral. What he could get horses to do at Liberty, I'm still working toward it. Once I started following that program of his and then all of a sudden my life went through the roof. All of a sudden I went from this guy named Pat Parelli to Pat Parelli, because I could get horses to do things that nobody else could. I could get them to go on horse trailers. I could do lead changes. I could do all the different things. And on top of that, I started with mules. I'm the founding president of the American Mule Association. And I've trained over 300 mules and 12 world champions. And that's what I found out, that you must treat a mule like you should treat a horse. And I just started treating the horses like I was treating the mules, and I started getting results off the planet. So again, I'm a learnaholic, but I'm a shareaholic. But I go out of my way to learn, and mules was way out of my way.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I mean, being a learnaholic and a shareaholic, as you described it, has turned into this program and people learning these things. And I think that's amazing, and that's why we're all here. Is you started out loving horses and being around horses and fascinated by them, but you've touched on it several times. You wanted to extend that to others and help them out, and by doing so, you're helping so many horses out too. So it's really very full circle.
Well, that's our mission statement, is to make the world a better place for horses and the humans that love them, no matter where they live or what they can afford. And today, with things like this, I mean, people are getting. If I could have been 16 years old and watched something like this, it would have changed my life. But we didn't have this back then. So now, what people can afford, they can live. I'm sure there's people all over the globe going to be able to see things like this. They've seen my videos and all the different things. We've even now, with all of our, what do you call, AI and all the different things that we have, the capacity in our platforms, we're translating to, how many? It was 140 languages or something like that, 138 languages. Wow. It's just, and so it's like it's breaking all the barriers. No matter where people are, what they can afford, they can get information today from me that has studied with the very best of the best of the best and consolidated that for everybody. They don't have to figure out and think, I need to get Volvo parts and put it on this Chevy, or do I get the Ford parts and put it on the Volkswagen? No, just follow this, get a great foundation, and then go specialize. Then go learn to do dressage, go learn to do reining, cutting, whatever it is you want to do. It's certain breeds or something. Specialize later. But I think the biggest thing is I see a lot of specialists these days that really don't have a great foundation. You have no idea how many professional horse trainers have hired me to come load a horse and a horse trainer to get to the horse show.
Wow.
Because that's not part of their education.
Sure.
That's horse psychology 101 around here. And again, we're in Johnsonville, South Carolina now, and we've got a unbelievable property here that is beautiful, and it's got the perfect ground. It's got the perfect 4 seasons temperature. Matter of fact, it's Laguna Beach is at 30. It's the same latitude on the plant on the map as Johnsonville. So it's just like
Wow.
that same, for the East Coast, same southern latitude, and we've created the Harvard of Horsemanship. We've got an apprentice program here and a resident program where people can come study up to 4 years, and they learn not only how to develop horses, they learn how to teach, they learn facility design, maintenance, and management, and they learn business.
Oh.
And that's the one difference, I think, that I studied business. I was an ag education major with a business minor in college. And then afterwards, I became a graduate of Michael Gerber's business development program.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned why most people that are good at something are not good business people. And so he gave me a blueprint to follow for business. And so I give all of my students a blueprint to follow now. So to me, I'm a success coach. There's nothing better than the taste of success. And I love it when I have other people become successful. And that's my biggest thing is we call our place here the Wow Factory. We're here to look, the Talent Development Center. We're here to help create the next icons of the future. I mean, Loren Barwick, who's the number one para-equestrian Olympian in the world. We've got like people like Jonathan Field, who's now out doing his own clinics and stuff like that, and all over the place. Darren Simpkins, who's now in the Hall of Fame in cutting, was one of my students in Australia. So all the different people that have gone out and have been able to either give them a great foundation or maybe just tweak something in the little thing they're doing and the little differences that make the difference. So I guess helping people is a great reward, and helping people helps horses. That's even a better reward.
Absolutely. Doesn't get better than that for sure.
Not at all.
Well, that wraps up my questions. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor to our audience. So for those of you who are watching, like I said, there should be a Q&A button on your screen. You'll just type in a question and I'll run through those as they come in. Like I said, we did have a couple that came in from social media though. So I'm going to read those real quick. Road Apple Ranch on Instagram said that they were not raised around horses, but they're now almost a senior citizen and own a few riding horses and a few brood mares. They want to know if it's too late for them to really learn to ride and be around horses.
It's never too late to learn. My job is inspiration and information. And what I try to do first is help people to understand horses so they can be safe. And really it's about managing our energy through time and space to manage the horse's energy through time and space. First on the ground. So if I could give you and anybody a tip, Road Apple Ranch is good with horses on the ground. Follow our program, and you within 2 weeks you're going to see something different. You're going to see what you were dreaming of when you first got into horses. Right.
She also asked about this is the one I was referring to with your levels program. If that would maybe be a good fit for them. They eventually want to master all the levels. I know that's probably everybody's goal, but you have to start it at square one. So I think I know the answer to that, but do you think that would be a good place for them to start the levels program?
Absolutely. I mean, this is why I created this program. I was, when I was a young man, I was into martial arts. And of course they have, white belt, blue belt, green belt, yellow belt, brown belt, they've got a levels program, and they teach their students. So the levels program is absolutely the way to start. The more talent and or confidence and or experience that you have, the faster you're going to go through our levels program. It's just a checkoff list. Can you do this? Sure. Can you do that? Do you know this? Do you know that? So to me, it's absolutely the place for everyone to start is level 1 and get to level 4. We have 10 levels in our program. Levels 5 and 6 are more competitive levels. 7, 8 are more professional levels. 9 and 10 are more artful. People that like myself that want to take it to an art form, that want to be the Queen of England's birthday present, which is what I was. So yes. She requested my presence and help work with her horses for her birthday one year. But
Very
yeah,
special.
so
Okay.
start level 1.
There you have
Only
it.
job you can start up at the top is called posthole digging. So might as well start right on the ground.
Yep. Don't see a name here, but they are asking that they say their horse has all go and no whoa. So how would you recommend kind of easing her gaits, they say, in the saddle?
Well, again, the number one way that most people try to do it is they try to lunge the horse and get the horse tired. So what I would try to get people to do is again, play all 7 games on the ground and teach a horse that connection is king. If they connect with me, it's like when they did when they were babies, that they would synchronize with the mother's mental and emotional and physical states. So if the mother was calm, they should be calm. So first thing is teach the horse the positive patterns that we want, of behavior patterns that we want on the ground. Instead of just saying, okay, how do I do it in the saddle? Prior and proper preparation prevents poor performance. Okay. So it's like, let's start on the ground and start to learn how that horses behave. And again, if we start doing things at liberty, you're going to find out real quick what they're really thinking. So create patterns. For example, a horse wants to go too much. Circles cause them to, kind of shorten their horizon. Straight lines lengthen their horizon. So first thing I would do is start things. Once I got in the saddle, after I won the 7 games on the ground, then I would start with small circles and building to bigger circles, back to smaller. So knowing that a horse, the way that they think is, and every horse has its own horseanality based on 4 things: innate characteristics, environmental influences, learned behavior, and spirit. And they're like computers. They may never do what you want, but they always do what you tell them, and then eventually becomes their program, and they do what you program them to do. So a lot of people want to get on them, kick them to go, pull them to stop, and use the reins to turn. And they've got a horse that's real goey, so then they think they're going to go, canter straight ahead for 5 miles. That just makes him want to go more. Where a circle has infinity on your side. Okay, so there's several different infinity programs or patterns, in our program that I would, eventually share with them. But again, I'm going to try to get people to realize maybe there's something over here we need to get good at first, and the horse needs to get good at first before we start doing it over here.
Sure. Grace is asking, how did your ag education major help shape how you work with and educate horses?
Well, first of all, I wanted to be an ag teacher.
Okay.
That was when I got out of high school, went into college. I wanted to be an ag teacher. I just always had this feeling that I want to teach and I want to share things. And so I think that was kind of my innateness anyway. I knew that I wanted to teach. And of course, I had a rodeo school. A lot of people don't know this, but I actually had a rodeo school back in the early 70s, created 3 world champions. And one guy was the all-round champion of Australia, Bob Berg. And so I try to always, whatever I could learn to do, I thought, how can I make this 10 times quicker? And so between that, wanting to be an ag teacher and in my ag major, everything I learned, most of it, I thought, what would be a simpler way to, now that I know it, what could I do to get my brain to get it? Okay. And then when I started sharing it with those simpler ways, I started seeing people start getting results 10 times faster than I did. And I thought, man, why isn't the rest of the world catching on to this? So I think it was kind of just a combination of everything. But yeah, I wanted to be an ag teacher.
There you go.
FFA was all the way.
I mean, yeah, the passion for teaching clearly was there, and it just took this path with horses, and it's grown into a great thing. Allison is asking, how do you refocus or calm down a horse that starts panicking after being left behind, say, on a trail ride?
That is a really good question. And guess what? Next week, the horse that we're having for our horse psychology seminar is a jumping horse that came from Ireland and is over here now in Wellington, and he has panic attacks. So what I'm going to give you first is the why it happens, okay? So a lot of people say, oh, my horse gets his adrenaline up and things go bad. That's one thing, but either what happens to most horses, they get into survival mode, the sense of self-preservation, like the herd is leaving them. So their cortisol levels go up. So one of the secrets is, if you're on a trail ride, put the slowest horse in the front. What happens on every trail ride, and I went to an AQHA trail ride with 500 riders, and guess what? All the fast horses were at the front, all the slokey pokies were at the back, and everybody else in the middle was jigging and dancing and prancing and going side and going cuckoo, and people were falling off and all kinds of stuff. Secret is you put the slow horses in the front, and then what you do is we call it the beep beep game. You know how when a truck goes backwards, beep beep beep. Yep. So what we do is the horses in the front slow down and back up toward the horses that are coming up their tail, instead of the person on the horse saying, no, don't get next to that horse. Let the person in front of you reach back with their romal or their rein or something and tap. You got to hold your horse's nose there and let them just tap them on the nose very lightly so they back up a step, walk, go again, and stop and back up. We play this game all the time. And one time I was in LA, I put an ad in the Los Angeles Times and advertising because I wanted to video all this, advertising for people that had horses that jig on the trail. So what we did was, it was a free clinic. We all went out to San Bernardino, and I taught everybody how to wiggle the rope and teach the horse to back up first on the ground. Then we all got on our horses and we put a lead rope on the horse and then stopped and backed up. And within 1 hour, we had 12 registered jiggers walking softly and sanely.
There you go.
So that's kind of we got to understand how these cortisol levels, when they rise, and adrenaline, that's where they just get into self-preservation mode, and there is no stopping it then.
Right.
So it's the real question is, how can I better prepare my horse and myself so that never happens? Not what do I do when it happens? What do I do to prevent it? And so again, starting things on the ground, getting it to where it is. And if you want to soar with eagles, don't fly with turkeys. So don't ride with people who aren't helping you on these things.
Right. Right.
And so, one of the things that's really cool, this, no matter where people live or what they can afford, is next week, if people can't make it to Ocala, Florida, we have virtual tickets for sale.
Nice.
And all they have to do is go to community.parelli.com. And is that right? Yeah, or just actually I just need to go to Parelli.com and they can get virtual tickets. And the tickets are a lifetime. You get to have that, kind of like this is going to be out there forever, right?
Yep.
Same thing with next Friday, the 28th and the 1st of March, which is a Friday and a Saturday. You're going to be able to see all the demonstrations and all the things on horse psychology 101 that we're going to be doing, especially with this really extreme horse that's going to show up. I can't wait to try to figure that puzzle out.
Sure.
So anyway, so if anybody wants to, we'd love to have you come. We have a few tickets available now, but if you can't make it, you can get on to the virtual ticket.
Yeah,
So,
like you said, that's kind of the great thing about this day and age now is we have these virtual opportunities for those who maybe either can't be there or whatever the factors are. They still
like right now, even if you're not here right now, you're probably going to watch us tomorrow.
Yes,
right?
exactly. Yep.
Same thing. If you can't watch it while I'm doing it, you're gonna be able to capture it. And some of the greatest things I've seen the great horsemen do, they're gone.
Sure.
It's gone. They never got a video of it. Not even. I don't even know if I have 3 pictures of Mr. Troy Henry. And I was with him for 5 years, 7 days a week, 6 in the morning till 7 at night, and sometimes later. Yeah. And nowadays everybody's got cameras and all this stuff. Yeah. So this is such an opportunity to be able to capture real horsemanship and what it really means, and get rid of all the bovine fecal matter that's out there.
I love that
the
term.
wives' tales, the mythology. You know how many people, if you ask them, 50 people, what are you supposed to do with a horse that rears? Have you ever heard them break the egg over their head?
No.
That's what people, that's age-old people. Oh, you break an egg over his head when he rears up. Why an egg? Oh, he thinks it's blood. I mean,
Oh,
the wives' tales in the mythology that's out there, or pull him over when he rears.
yeah,
Yeah, who's going to pull a horse over on themselves when he rears up? And it's some of the advice that's out there is just crazy. And
yeah,
so I really love that your magazine is doing things like this so people can kind of get to the source.
sure,
It's
sure.
great.
Yeah. A couple more questions. Avonlea asks, my horse is always behind my leg. What are some tips to help her get in front of my leg?
Well, this is a pretty simple one, conditioned response. Okay. There's a sequence of opening up, smiling, bringing your energy up, smile with all four cheeks, and turn it into a light squeeze. And if that doesn't work, smooch if you please, and then just give them 3 taps on each side. Okay. So it's a open up, smile, squeeze cheek. And pretty soon, your horse, if you start to do this, just like the dog ringing the bell, starts to salivate. If he knows the sequence is coming, but most people they grip it and more. Come on, get going, get going. And so we've got to understand that the drive is back here. Horses have 5 zones. Zone 1 is the head. Zone 2 is the neck. Zone 3 we sit in. Zone 4 is the hips. Zone 5 is the tail. So we got to tell zones 5 and 4 to push 3, 2, and 1 forward. But a lot of people keep pushing on zone 3, and some of it, the energy is going that way, some of it's going that way. So it's just really a simple thing of making a conditioned response, following a sequence, and using what we call the 4 phases: suggest, ask, tell, promise. You don't have to be mean. You don't have to touch them hard, but you've got to say, let's say you want a horse to walk faster. You got to be willing to go and maybe get out into a canter and then say, now let's walk. And pretty soon, when you start to bring your life up, he brings his life up. People always, every time, in all my students here, when they come here to Parelli Landing in Johnsonville, South Carolina, they're here and we're riding, and they're like, every day I ride a different horse. And they're like, why is your horse always walk the fastest? And I ride their horse. Why does it start walking faster when I ride it? Okay. So there's something about our energy. That's what, like jockeys, why can one jockey get a horse to run faster than another jockey? It's all about energy. It's about energy management. It's about how do we get this horse to synchronize with our life force, with our energy? How do we manage our energy through time and space to manage their energy through time and space? So, and again, we've got to kind of know what we're doing. The other day, I took my team to an electric go-kart place. And of course, I got my handicapped son, he's 41. And so I stayed back and we went and kind of slow and went around. But, you know, it was amazing how there was, I don't know, 8 or 9 of us. But this one guy kept winning every time he won they timed it and stuff like that. And so I sat back and I watched, and it's like, not just because you drive fast, it's how you manage the energy into the turn and out of the turn and where you go and all this kind of thing. So there's something to this. It's not just who steps on the gas pedal the hardest.
Right.
It's when you do it, when to be, where to be, why to be, what to do when you get there, when to quit doing it. So it was really interesting how Nick kept winning everything, and by a second or two, which is a long ways.
Yeah.
And it was just because of the way he was managing that his energy in that car and through those turns and all that sort of thing. So kind of, it's not just go fast or kick them to go, or
it's the whole recipe.
It is a recipe. It's simple, but it's not easy because we're predators. And not only that, we're primates. So it means we're monkey see, monkey do learners. And on top of that, it's natural for us as a primate to lean, pull, grip, and grapple. Lean, pull, grip, and grapple. Watch most barrel race. Lean, pull, grip, and grapple. Instead of get around, push them around. Some of the greats like Charmaine James and stuff like that rode completely different. They were so natural.
Yeah. Emily is asking if there's any hope for a very stoic, quiet, almost lazy horse who seems shut down. He's had a lot of owners, but she can't seem to get him to come out of his shell. He seems to not show emotion or anything bothering him until he's seemingly out of nowhere explodes, bugs, bolts, smashes through fences. She worries that maybe he's hurt people before. She's just never seen a horse so shut down. And if there's any advice for handling that.
That's probably a left brain introvert, is what I would guess. And so let's just real quickly on this left brain. There's introverts and extroverts. Okay.
Mhm.
There's right brain and left brain. And right brain are more instinctual, and things like that. Left brain is more think about it and you and who else. Okay.
Mhm.
So a left brain extrovert wants to play a lot and wants to have fun. And those horses are fun as long as you got lots of play drive too. Left brain introverts oftentimes are the ones that are kind of sully and like, yeah, why should I do that? And then when someone puts enough pressure on and it doesn't match the logic, the why, then they'll explode. So we have to go slower with introverts. We have to go faster with extroverts usually. But we really want to get a horse on the ground to where they respond with respect without fear. There should be no fear and respect anyway. But we want to make sure that a horse, it's like an airplane. When you before you take off in an airplane, you better check everything out. You better check, see if the rudders work, make sure the air loins work, make sure the rev up, the prop is set, whatever. There's a whole pre-flight check that people who are in aviation do before they take off. You don't want to get up in the air and hear the pilot say, I know we were heading to Chicago, but now we're going to land in New York because I couldn't my rudder wasn't working. I couldn't turn the plane enough to get over there. You don't want it. And same thing with people on horses. People will just saddle up and get on, kick them to go and pull them to stop and wonder why it doesn't work. So my advice is that we find out on the ground first, there is this thing called, we're getting deeper and deeper here. There's this thing called behavioral cancer. And it's mental, it can be emotional, it can be physical. And that behavioral cancer, you don't want to find out when you're in the saddle. You want to make sure you've got it, you know where you're at with that before you get on. And there's ways to find out. Ways to find out where the horse's confidence levels are. There's response levels for the steady pressure, response level from rhythmic pressure. Okay. I was at a clinic one time, and this guy had a horse and seemed everything seemed to be going good. And I said, now go like this and touch him 3 times on the hindquarters with that stick and string lightly. And that horse online, when he ran, it took off bucking and going like crazy. And he goes, that happened to me last week when I tried to give her that spank you told me. I said, because you didn't do it on the ground first to see what would happen. Okay, so then we played with the horse, and for 3 days we played with the horse. And on the 3rd day, the horse, like that, the horse left. He understood. So now when he got in the saddle, he went, and the horse left. So horses only do what you don't want for 3 reasons: because they're scared, because they don't understand, or they're disrespectful, or a combination of one of those 3 things. All right. So what we have to do, sometimes it's all 3, by the way. So what we have to do is find out why he's not responding with respect. And then we got to figure out, is it because he doesn't understand? Is it because he's scared? Or is it because he's disrespectful? And each one of those things we have to treat completely different. So it's a little hard for me to tell what's going on here. But again, get into our program. And one of the things that's wonderful is I have 150 instructors worldwide. And you can send me or them a video, if you're in the program, of what's going on. And we can see real quickly and look and be able to help. So that's why we've created a network. And by the way, for those that like to watch TV, we have something called the Horse Tamer series, and they can look up thehorsetamer.com, and it's on Hulu and what else? All the different channels like that. It's called the Horse Tamer series. And what we did is we're in Marion County, which is the horse capital of the world, 80,000 horses in one county. And we put on Facebook, who's got a problem horse and want to see it on TV? They came out of the woodworks. And we went to their place where there wasn't a good facility. We went to their place for their environment, where they were getting bucked off, where they were getting run off with, where they couldn't load the horse in the trailer. We went to their place. So that's brand new out on the thing. So if you want to see some pretty interesting things, And maybe some of these answers and stuff, because again, I'm explaining things as I'm going along, trying to simplify things. I love it when I get the the BFO and people are kind of like, oh,
Right.
I never would have thought of that. So I think some of these things, and again, in our program we have the levels program, plus we have what's called the Savvy Club, which has more than 2,000 videos and vignettes of all these little things. Because again, your horse is different than somebody else's horse, and you're different than somebody else. So it's knowing all these different things, and we all have our own personality. Horses have personalities, and we got to figure out how do we get all those things together. And some people are very confident, some people are not so confident, some people are very knowledgeable, some people not so knowledgeable. So
Sure.
trying to figure out all those different things to help regular people get extraordinary results is a fascinating. It's like people that love to do puzzles. That's my puzzle.
Yeah, sure is. Yeah. We do have a few more questions left, but we're about out of time. So I'm just going to ask one more from Sarah. She said her horse has a habit of counter bending when tracking to the left. What should she do to fix this habit?
Well, again, now that could be a possible physical thing. I don't know. Okay. But just like those of us that are right-handed, or some people are left-handed, our muscles get more, we get like, I'm right-handed, so all my muscles got stronger on this side. That's why roller skating to the left is easy for right-handed people, because our right muscles are back and our left muscles are looser and forward. So getting a horse, I would start off on the ground. Okay. And the first thing I would do is start with a 22-foot rope. And I would ask my horse to maintain gait and direction, look where they're going, and reward them to when they want to come back, and rub on them and let them rest and get some relief, so that when they go around the circle to the left, they're looking to the inside toward their human partner. I see a lot of people that are playing with their horse on the ground, students of mine as well as others, and the horses are looking to the outside of the circle. Well, this means that the horse is pulling with the front end rather than transferring the weight and pushing from the hindquarters. And he'd really, if you let go of the lead rope, he would take off in the direction he's looking. So that's the test. You want your horse to go around in a circle, and if you drop the rope, you want him to continue that circle and come back to you. So I would start on the ground. The other thing you can do is lots of leg yields, a lot of lateral moves. You teaching horses, the left leg yields means he moves away from your left leg. And so learning to teach a horse to look left when you're on a straight line, look left, but travel to the right. And then the other side, look right, travel left. Okay. Mm-hmm. Look left, travel right. That bends these muscles on the inside here. So like her horse looks like this when it's going to the right, but it looks like this when it's going to the left. Its muscles are contracted on the inside and longer on the outside. So there's certain physical exercises that we can do. On top of that, it could be a chiropractic thing. It could be numerous. About 99% of the time, it isn't. Everything I've ever played with, pretty much over the most of it oftentimes is just, it's habit. It's like, when you injure your right hand and now you got to brush your teeth and shave with your left hand, like, oh, you feel how clumsy you are, because that's not your habit. So for whatever reason, that would be my guess. I would start on the ground, build up to in the saddle, do all 7 games in the saddle and on the ground. Just, when we drive our car, the brakes get worse, the steering gets worse, right? But if you do these 7 games and harmonize with your horse on the ground in the saddle, your horse gets better and better and better and better instead of worse and worse and worse. But if we don't be aware of these little things that are happening here, then we don't realize that pretty soon we got a crooked horse. And I guess the old song, takes a crooked horse to sing a crooked song or something like that.
All right. Well, thank you for answering those. Like I said, sorry to those that we couldn't get to, just kind of out of time here, but thank you to everybody who attended. And of course, Pat, thank you and your team so much for your time. I think people will really get a lot out of this, and it was great.
Yeah. Thank you. And one last thing, if they get a virtual ticket, they can,
Yeah.
in any language or most languages, we've got some interpreters there. So if they're watching this worldwide or something, they can actually ask questions during our breakout sessions.
There you go.
So like if you really want to know some of these things, I'm tickled to death to share this stuff with you. And I have lots of live examples. So I would get if you can't make it, I'd get a virtual ticket and come on, and then, hey, come see us out here. And especially if you got some talent and got professional goals or competitive goals, come to the Harvard of Horsemanship, Parelli Landing in Johnsonville, South Carolina. Just go to our website, Parelli.com.
Perfect. Well, hopefully we'll send some your way. And like I said, I think people will get a lot out of this. And thank you so much.
Okay.
All right.
Keep it natural.
What was that? Sorry.
Keep it natural, and may the horse be with you.
Yes. Perfect. Well, thank you so much.
Okay.
All right. Bye, everyone.